The Métis Nation of Ontario Registry requires those who register to provide evidence that they are descendant of an historic Métis community.
More discussion around Bill C-53 on the Hill.
That's what they thought from what they read down there, and they believe it, but up here it's different.
Polar bears are thriving in Resolute Bay.
It's a mental health thing for a lot of people, and winter takes a toll on a lot of people.
A new skate park is coming to Winnipeg. Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Savannah Kelly. Bill C-53, the Métis self-government legislation, continues to make its way through committee in Ottawa. Chiefs have been calling for the bill to be rescinded, while others want it passed. Here's Annette Francis with the latest.
In his opening statement, the founding president of the Métis of Ontario, Tony Belcourt, said he's hoping Bill C-53 will be passed so that Métis and First Nations can begin to rebuild a nation-to-nation relationship. The legislation has been a major point of contention for many First Nations in Ontario and the Manitoba Métis Federation. One issue the MMF had was with the Métis of Ontario's registration process. According to Belcourt, it's a sound process.
The Métis Nation of Ontario Registry requires those who register to provide evidence that they are descendant of an historic Métis community. And that registry has been reviewed many times for its veracity and validity.
Chief Linda McVicker of the Animkiwazing First Nation in northwestern Ontario asked that the bill not pass. She said the Métis of Ontario are misrepresenting themselves, and passing the bill would make a mockery of her community along with other treaty rights holders recognized under the Constitution. She said the proposed legislation is not based on historical fact.
I guess the difficulty that we have, though, is that the Powley decision is based out of Ontario. How do we get around the fact that for 20 years we've established that Powley is law in Ontario and then asked to take out the Ontario Métis out of the only recognized Section 35 precedent in Canada?
Powley was about hunting moose, right? This is about self-government you're talking about, and you're talking about treaty. In the bill, it does say treaty. And you can't talk about treaty without talking about a land base. So Powley was about harvesting rights. And we have cases that we've taken to court, hundreds of them, about harvesting rights as well. So there's a big difference.
The committee will resume its work in 2 weeks. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
After 2 days, 20 rounds, and 4 candidates, the Chiefs of Nova Scotia have a new leader. Andrea Paul of the Pictou Landing Mi'kmaq Nation is the Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief for Nova Scotia. Paul replaces Regional Chief Paul J. Prosper after he was appointed to the Senate of Canada last July. Andrea was Chief of Pictou Landing since 2011, known for advocating for the closure of a pulp and paper plant that polluted the waters in her community. Climate change in the near future is expected to significantly reduce the polar bear habitat as soon as 6 years from now. However, polar bears are enjoying a small victory thanks to continued adaptive co-management policies. Trevor Wright reports.
In Nunavut, polar bears are becoming a more common sight. Still listed as a vulnerable species, adaptive co-management between governments and municipalities in Nunavut have led to a rise in local polar bear populations since the 1990s, according to the World Wildlife Federation. But one longtime resident of Grise Fjord says things aren't as bad as other reports are saying.
That's what they thought from what they read down there, and they believe it, but up here it's different. So they thought polar bears were starving and it's going to affect us.
In Resolute Bay, residents were sharing food harvested from whales by local hunters during the summer. with each other and with the bears, or nano-eat.
There's a whole bunch and they're all healthy looking, all big, their stomachs are almost touching the ground.
Polar bears are usually tolerant when you keep your distance, but don't let that fool you. They're still very dangerous creatures.
It really depends on if they're hungry, if they have cubs. Because if they're hungry, they don't tend to get scared easier, so sometimes you have to kill them because they're aggressive because they're hungry. They can go in the community and start being aggressive.
As a result, residents are required to burn their garbage at the dump, so the bears don't eat it. While polar bear populations are on the up, the loss of sea ice habitat due to climate change is expected to make a significant impact, with ice-free summers in the Arctic expected as soon as 2030. Trevor Wright, APTN National News, Resolute Bay.
Atikuss is a retail company that celebrates Indigenous culture. The company began with shoes but has since expanded, and it recently launched a magazine of the same name with the hope of reaching even more people and bridging cultural gaps. Maricela Amador has more.
Vous savez, Atikuss, j'ai fondé cette entreprise-là il y a 9 ans.
When Josée Leblanc first started her fair trade company, Atikuss, she never imagined that one day she would also launch a magazine dedicated to promoting Indigenous artists and products.
On va mettre en lumière des gens qui n'ont pas la chance de l'être. Donc, c'est vraiment ça. Puis en même temps, je me suis dit, ça va devenir un trait d'union entre les peuples. Puis en étant dans la grande réconciliation, mais je me suis dit, écoute, c'est le temps de le faire, c'est là, on le fait.
Leblanc, who is Innu from Washatmak Maniutanam, grew up in a family of entrepreneurs.
Les femmes qui faisaient des mocassins étaient payées 3-4 $ de l'heure, puis je trouvais ça épouvantable.
She started her company after she realized how little women artisans were making in her community.
Si je peux faire quelque chose, je vais le faire. Puis je me suis engagée envers elle, trouver une façon d'augmenter au moins au prix de salaire minimum pour pouvoir faire de l'artisanat. Puis là, on est rendu au-delà de ça. Ça, c'est une très grande fierté que j'ai. Donc, c'est vraiment ça, la revue Atikuss.
Now, more than ever, Leblanc is committed to helping other Indigenous women become entrepreneurs and achieve success.
C'est grâce à son rêve qu'elle a abouti ici.
Kenny Régie, the vice chief of Innu, Takwekan Washatmak Maniutanam, said that his community is focused on helping women break into the business world.
Nous avons des programmes qui aident vraiment nos jeunes entrepreneuriats côté féminin et même masculin. Nous avons aussi des partenaires qui nous aident grandement, comme le Minerai de Fer Québec, qui aide vraiment nos entrepreneurs de la communauté.
Minerai de Fer Québec, c'est une entreprise 100% québécoise.
During the launch, Quebec Iron Ore, a mining company, announced they would be providing Atikuss with an initial loan of $100,000. Lauriane Fontaine, the City of Montreal's Commissioner for Relations with Indigenous People, said that she has been following Leblanc's trajectories for many years. Fontaine is also Innu from Washatmak Maniutanam.
C'est une belle façon de faire découvrir le talent dans les communautés, de faire rayonner ce talent-là. On le voit pas assez. Puis comme elle l'a dit, les communautés sont tellement éloignées les unes des autres. Donc ça va être un bel endroit pour regrouper tous ces beaux gens-là puis les faire rayonner partout au Québec.
C'est elle qui est sur la première page couverture, puis c'est elle qui va être sur les prochains numéros aussi.
At the event, Leblanc also named Jocelyne Jean-Pierre Bellefleur as the face of the magazine.
On devient tout de suite son meilleur ami quand on la connaît.
The first issue of Atikuss includes interviews with the likes of Michel Odette and Catherine Champagne-Jourdain. The magazine is now available in digital and paper formats. Maricela Amador, APTN National News, Montreal.
Coming up after the break, we speak with our Truth in Politics panel about the current realities facing Indigenous hunters. Stay with us. Welcome back to APTN National News. Most of us depend on the local supermarket when it comes to hunting and gathering, but many of our rural and northern cousins are able to get out on the land and take down a moose or an elk, which can feed a family for most of the winter. But it is tricky. With shrinking forest land and shrinking treaty and Aboriginal rights, a lot of our hunters are looking over their shoulders with an eye out for the conservation officers. Our Truth in Politics panel spoke with Dennis Ward earlier.
Carrie Negon, thanks for being with us as always. Carrie, starting with you, how are the Indigenous hunters doing?
It's really interesting what is transpiring here in the province. We're seeing more focus on hunting, traditional hunting, using hunting as an educational tool. There's a resurgence of land-based education. And right now I'm seeing a lot of communities having community hunts and places where they're teaching the younger generation some of the traditional practices that go along with hunting and stewardship. The interesting thing, though, as this is happening, we're seeing a decrease in the amount of places where people can hunt. Like has been a number of Crown land sales that's taken place, so it's decreasing the places where hunters can go and actually harvest animals, and it's kind of sad, actually.
Yeah, certainly a big issue out there in Saskatchewan. Negon, what are you hearing from the fields and streams of Anishinaabe territory?
So absolutely, as Carrie said, the pandemic did something interesting in our communities. It made people who were stuck at home, who were stuck close by to the local, often with relatives, to relearn hunting practices, fishing practices, traditional practices, even of harvesting the earth, harvesting hide, harvesting medicines in different ways, and learning about those techniques again. And I think that's a good trend. That's something that you see young people particularly picking up the work that our ancestors have done. But Carrie's absolutely right. There is an ongoing shrinking and shrinking and shrinking of public use land. And we only have to look to Ontario in the famous sort of green belt, that when there's green land, when there's natural land, you see that being reduced time and time again by premiers, particularly premiers, because it's the provinces that take care of natural resources and public green space. And so you don't see a lot of traditional territories being opened up. You see them shrinking. The one sort of exception, I think, is in Treaty 8, where you see hundreds of thousands of acres being turned over to First Nations communities, but that's due to treaty land entitlement, land that's already owed. Oftentimes when we have land that's owed to us, it's not green space that's given. It might be an area in a city or so on, or maybe a farm. And so there is an ongoing kind of tension that you're going to see more and more involving the issue of hunting, especially since young people are picking up that work and are going to need a place to do it.
Carrie, can you tell us what the Treaty Land Sharing Network is?
It's a grassroots organization. It doesn't have any government influence. It's just farmers and Indigenous people who got together and decided that they needed to do something to honor the land sharing agreements that treaties are based upon. It came out of the crackdown on trespassing laws and what happened with Colton Boushie. It was farmers within Saskatchewan who wanted to do something. They wanted to show Indigenous people that, you're welcome and that we honor this treaty. And so it's just farmers who've gotten together and they have developed this organization where they've opened up their land. They say what's available, whether it's berries, whether it's space where they can hold ceremonies, whether it's spots where they can go and hunt and harvest and use their land. The only requirement that they have is that they let them know when they're going to be accessing their land, and they have signage up on their property where you'd see no trespassing or private property. They have signs that say something about Indigenous people are welcome. I'm not sure of the exact sign. I haven't seen it, but yeah, they post signs on their properties saying that they are part of the Treaty Land Sharing Network. And you just go online, log in, find out where, contact them and make arrangements. And it's a really neat grassroots organization, and I think it's totally cool. They're not confining themselves to provincial jurisdictions. They're going by treaties. Right now they're just working in Treaty 4 and Treaty 6, and they hope to expand across Canada and show people that, you know, individuals can honor treaty.
Given all that, Nigan, can you kind of put into context for us hunting when it comes to provincial jurisdiction?
There was a really famous sort of battle a few years ago here in Manitoba. And while it's important to talk about treaty, but generally Indigenous rights that relate with the land often involve hunting and fishing. And then Premier Brian Pallister sort of famously announced that there was a preponderance of Indigenous hunters at nighttime. And of course, what he was talking about were two Métis hunters who were evoking their right as Métis to hunt and in a particular public territory at nighttime. And it's a kind of typical stereotype of the ways in which mainstream society sees Indigenous peoples evoking their rights to access a livelihood, whether it be lobster fishing, whether it be hunting for game, moose, deer, or whether it be fishing, just generally for fish on a lake, like Lake Winnipeg, for example. There's this kind of demonization of Indigenous peoples that happens when we are evoking our rights that sometimes may be contrary or contradictory to the rights of Canadian hunters and fishers. And so as a result, we're often put in those situations of subservience or seen as a problem. But the fact is that I hope Canadians start to see that as we pick up more, and, you know, perhaps surprisingly to some Canadians, we are hunting and fishing more than ever, by wanting to return to our livelihoods, to our traditional ways as peoples, that we want to be able to create a society in which people can understand that this is something that our people have done for millennia, and we're simply continuing that tradition. We're not seeking anything extra or unique. And unfortunately, for many premiers, like then Premier Brian Pallister, but some of his contemporaries now, they often treat our treaties as our treaty rights as something oppositional to Canadians when it simply is not.
Carrie, Nigan, interesting conversation. We'll have to leave it there. Appreciate you taking your time.
You gotcha.
We need to take one more quick break. When we come back, a Samoan American content creator shares the importance of Indigenous visibility and how to deal with online trolls. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. April Isidore sent us this full moon. She saw this over the town of Slave Lake while she was coming out of the Walmart. Keep looking up, April, and sending us these great pictures. You can send your pictures to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting off on the east coast, Halifax, snowy 4 degrees, Charlottetown 5. Nain, sunshine, -6, Kuujjuaq, -9. Val-d'Or, snowy, -3, Quebec City, 2 degrees. Sault Ste. Marie, 3 degrees, mix of sun and cloud, North Bay, -2. Kapuskasing, snowy, -1, Sioux Lookout, 0 degrees. Churchill, sunshine, 0 degrees, Thompson, 3 degrees and snow. Brandon, sunshine, 2 degrees, Princess Harbor, 2. Swift Current, sunshine, 8 degrees there, Yorkton, +1. Stony Rapids, 0 degrees and sunshine there, Buffalo Narrows, 3 degrees and rain. Grand Prairie, 9 degrees, Peace River, snowy there and 6. Calgary, 10 degrees, mix of sun and cloud, Edmonton, 9 degrees. Vancouver, rainy, 11 degrees there, Canal, rainy, 7. Fort Nelson, -1, mix of sun and cloud, Smithers, rainy and 5 degrees. Dawson, -9 and snow there, Watson Lake, -2. Wrigley, snowy, -11 there, Yellowknife, -1. Paulatuck, snowy, -9 there, Inuvik, -12. Baker Lake, snowy there, -8, and Arviat, -4, sunshine. Iqaluit, -18 and snowy there, Igloolik, -16. Samoan American content creator Dason Afualo and her sister Drew have become familiar faces on TikTok and Instagram. Dason spoke with APTN about the importance of visibility and how to handle online trolls. Amelia Fournier has more.
Growing up in a Samoan American household, Dason Afualo says she never saw people who looked like her in her family and media, other than former wrestler Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Growing up queer, I never saw any sort of Samoan or Pacifica representation that were queer. And what's been really amazing about me being open about like my identity and my story is being able to connect with other queer Pacifica people in media or who have been working in media for a really long time.
So for the past few years, she's been sharing her experiences as a queer plus-size Samoan American on TikTok and Instagram, like the struggles of getting medical care.
I tested you for UTI, it's not that. Must just be chlamydia. Okay. She didn't even test me for it. She goes, it just has to be that. I don't know. Then I go, well, does it matter if my partner's a girl than a boy? And she went, yeah, are you gay? Yes, you didn't even ask me. Don't even get me started on the way they treat fat people when they go to the doctor.
She and her sister Drew have a podcast together, Two Idiot Girls, where they share funny stories and fan submissions.
Like we were going to make one on MySpace, a fan fiction page, and I literally taught myself how to do web design so I could do the whole thing. HTML code. Yeah. And then as soon as we were about to upload, I go, what are we doing? And Drew said, I don't know, delete it.
Like we basically were raised to be each other's best friends, and we were raised as twins almost 2 or 2 years apart. And it's honestly just been such a blessing and so much fun to get to work with my sister and involve my mom's one of my managers too. So like it's truly a family affair.
When speaking to your oppressor, you have to speak in the language they understand.
Drew's TikTok account, where she often criticizes men who make negative comments about women, took off before Dason's. So Dason has learned how to handle negative social media comments because of her.
Getting to watch my sister go through that, and she's just like, they're ugly and I don't care about them, has changed my perspective on how people perceive me in general too, but most especially when it's from people I don't know and I don't value how they look at me or their perception of me or their opinion of me. That's why it just rolls off my back.
If you can be out, proud, and online safely, Afualo encourages Indigenous queer people thinking of becoming content creators to do it because
there's someone out there that looks like you that's looking for you.
I hope I get...
Amelia Fournier, APTN National News, Montreal.
Skateboarders in Winnipeg no longer have to fear the rain and snow thanks to a new indoor skate park in the city's downtown. Atikuss Skate Park aims to be a space for everyone with its central location at Portage Place Mall. Its name translates from Cree to mean come in, a term for welcoming others into your home. In a city that sees snow for almost half the year, skateboarders usually have to wait until summer to show off their best tricks. The Manitoba Skateboarding Coalition gathered community support to rectify the need and create this pilot project. Their president and Atikuss Skate Park board member Graham Constant says the park will help with the winter blues.
It's a mental health thing for a lot of people, and winter takes a toll on a lot of people. If you cannot connect with your friends, your family, you're kind of stuck inside all day, maybe just, I don't know, stuck to playing video games or something like that. Like, this is way more refreshing, motivating, and good for your mind and body.
Good stuff there. And that's a wrap on your Friday news. For news anytime or to catch up on stories you may have missed, visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Savannah Kelly, and from all of us here at APTN News, Marcy, Miigwech, and thank you for joining us tonight. Take care and have a great weekend.